let's talk a little bit about one of the key processes that underlies speech sound development, and that's experience, right? It's a pretty basic one. But in particular, hearing the speech that adults produce, like your ambient language, is going to influence the sounds that you as a child choose to babble, and also the prosodic character of later babbling, the melody, the rise and fall, the pitch, the emphasis, right? That's the prosody, and that's also going to be influenced by the sounds of the ambient language. But something that's really interesting is that there really appears to be a social component involved in this kind of experience of the ambient language. So in particular, we know that infants increase the complexity of their vocal output when their mother provides immediate social feedback. So the infant makes some kind of output, and the mother, or the caretaker, but I guess in this study it was mothers, and the mother, sort of, oh, yay, or, gives some sort of indication that that's exciting and socially engaging, and the infant then increases the complexity of the syllables or the different sound combinations that they're producing in response to that social response from the mother. And mothers respond more often when the babbling is perceived as more mature. So this is from a 2016 article, and this is a 2018 release of sort of talking about this article where this quote is from. But the increased rate of response creates more language learning opportunities. By varying the form and context of their vocalizations, influence maternal behavior. So the infant's actually influencing how their mother is responding. It's this dyad, this interactive kind of experience, and they're creating the social interactions that facilitate learning. So it's not just the mother responding socially, but the infants can do something to facilitate that social response, and thereby again make this lovely feedback loop where there's social engagement and there's more complex vocalizations that sound more mature, and then there's more social engagement because of that, and all of this facilitates learning. Mothers also modify their speech to be an even better language learning signal when they're responding to their infant's babbling, right? So this is a 2019 study. When they're responding to a baby's babbling, but not when simply speaking to a baby, because you can narrate to a child, you can speak to them. They even speak to them as if you're reading them a story or narrate or speaking to them like, oh baby, great. But when you're actually responding to their babbles, it turns out that adults seem to, at least in this study, unconsciously modify their speech to be a simpler, cleaner signal, fewer unique words, very familiar words. They're going to have shorter sentences, more one-word replies, which are easier to pick up on, right? When they're responding to the babbling in particular, as opposed to a baby who's just sort of watching attentively. And then 8-month-olds are known to increase their consonant vowel vocalizations, both the canonical ones that are very syllable-like and the non-canonical ones, which are maybe just playing around with these consonant vowel combinations, when their mother responds to what she thinks they're saying. So the baby's like, I love you, and the mom's like, oh, I love you too, right? Sort of interpreting that vocalization in a way that is like mature speech in this case. And so the babies then increase, right? They're using that social response to really sort of produce more of these vocalizations, and the babies at this point also learn to direct more of their babbling to their mothers as a communicative signal, right? And then this study from 2003 is one I just love. It turns out that if you are an infant learning foreign sounds, for example, American infants learning Mandarin phonemes, so things you're not going to hear in your ambient language if you're an American English speaker, but which you would hear if a Mandarin relative comes to visit, for example. And what they had in this study was this very cool thing where in one case, the baby was read a story by a live speaker, like the person was actually there, as you see in this picture, reading a story in Mandarin, right? Versus a broadcast, a video, in this case a television broadcast, because this was 2003, but a video broadcast of that same speaker making the same visual signals, making the same auditory sounds, but just not physically there, right? And so it turns out that in this case, if the person is physically there, therefore signaling to the baby very clearly that there's a social interaction going on, well then the infant was able to learn some of those Mandarin phonemes, but not when it was just from a video, right? So that social component is huge for unlocking the infant's ability to harness information, right? If they're not socially engaged, which seems to happen in this particular age, about 8 months, I think it was, when the speaker is physically there, as opposed to just being a video, right? If they're socially engaged, then they can pick up a lot more information.